These are the top updates in Myfaction and MyRise in WWE 2K23. Let's start off with Myfaction because there's some goods and there's some bads in here too, in my opinion. Myfaction was introduced in 2K22, doing weekly challenges, 4-on-4 matches to unlock cards, card packs, gather points, and unlock more cards. As 2K writes, the objective is to build your own factions from the various men and women in the game and participate in daily and weekly challenges while also competing online to earn rewards and more. So that's the new thing this year versus last year. Last year, no online. This year, they have introduced online play. 2K writes that one of the biggest changes in additions to Myfaction is the all-new online head-to-head quick play mode. Last year, Myfaction was strictly an offline experience. The natural evolution of the mode was to take the action online to compete against others, because who doesn't want to show off their star-studded faction? Possibly a lot of people. Through online quick play, you can put your skills to the test with the best cards in your collection and prove your faction is a force to be reckoned with. Challenge friends and other WWE 2K community members for endless hours of fun. Here's the thing with Myfaction for the online piece. One, I am glad it's there. I think that is a plus. However, what's the goal with the online piece? Am I just having the faction that I created and going online and doing a 4-on-4 match against someone else online? Am I getting their cards if I beat them? Am I getting any rewards? Am I getting points? Am I unlocking cards for doing the online matches? These are questions I have. We'll know next week when the game comes out, but it just feels like they threw in an online piece because they needed to. Another addition for Myfaction is going to be the live events. 2K writes that the WWE gives fans plenty of shows and events to look forward to year-round, and we're eager to deliver the same kind of excitement in 2K23. This year, we've added scheduled live events for players to participate in. With regular post-launch content to play through, live events is a single-player experience that offers a variety of match types and challenges where you can earn new rewards. You'll have the opportunity to play unique matchups curated by WWE 2K designers to unlock more content and diversify your experience. So this piece has me a little bit interested, but also a little skeptical and nervous. The reason why is it sounds like they are going to curate based off of current WWE events, matches that are going on in WWE. Think about WrestleMania. There's a good chance they would put in something like Logan Paul versus Seth Rollins in here after WrestleMania, but they would include, for example, Seth Rollins' WrestleMania attire, but keep it locked to Myfaction. Or they try to do some dream scenarios like DX versus the NWO, but all signs point to DX still not being in the game and potentially putting it in Myfaction once again. The point is, live events, cool idea. I like the single player aspect to it. I like that I'm gonna get new rewards for it, but that's not going to translate to the single player experience offline. It's all going to be within Myfaction. And where I'm concerned is that it's still going to be the same old thing where we are going to have locked attires, locked character models, all within Myfaction. And to that point, WWE 2K writes the following regarding the character models and the attires. WWE fans have seen some of their favorite superstars transition and evolve, from their attire to their overall look. It's not unusual for even the biggest names in sports entertainment to experience a rebrand. In Myfaction, players will find some of the most coveted, historic, and current looks for superstars and legends. Many of these looks are exclusively available in Myfaction, making it just a little more special. And so, as we all speculated, and it was talked about in previous interviews with the developers, they're going to include classic attires, classic looks, and they're going to put it in Myfaction and lock it in there. And I will say, speaking for myself, and maybe a few of you out there too, this is a misstep. This is not the way to go with this mode. Players do not want locked classic titles, arenas, shows, character models, whatever it is, to be locked to an online paid model mode that you cannot then bring into the core game. There are other ways to do this. We've talked about this in the past. There's other ways for 2K, in my opinion, to make revenue from classic attires and models. But locking it in here and the developer saying, well, we can't bring those attires and character models to the main game because it's too much work, essentially. And there is a separate team that work on Myfaction every year. I personally don't think that's the right approach for players. That's not in their best interest. We had this last year, but I don't want to go through this again, and I think a lot of players will just be turned off from Myfaction completely if they see Evolution is in Myfaction and they get an Evolution card for Triple H or Ric Flair. Ric Flair is not even announced as DLC or in the game, but man, there is a really good possibility that Ric Flair gets added in to Myfaction as a card and a playable character in that mode only. And I think that even if you are a relatively casual fan of the 2K games and wrestling games, and you jumped in here, you started playing some matches, and then you find out that, hey, I got Ric Flair or a Triple H or a Seth Rollins card or a Roman Reigns card with his Shield attire, and you play the match and you see that and you have that, and then you go in to play exhibition and you're like, where is it? Locking it up more and more within this one mode is a hindrance. Frankly, you could sell attire packs, model packs separately. People will pay for it. Dummies like me are gonna buy it. And my last point on this is that even if for some reason it was too difficult to get the classic Titantrons, the classic music, ported over to the base game, unlock the model itself, the attire, and put it in the base game so players at least have it as an alternate attire. Even if the entrance is something that they couldn't mimic, but that classic look and the classic attire for that superstar is made available in the base game once you've unlocked it in Myfaction, at least there you're moving in the right direction and you're giving fans that model, that character that they played for, that they have unlocked, and they have actually spent money on through Myfaction. Now, the other piece they're talking about is that they have evolved these Myfaction cards themselves. So they've increased basically the aesthetics of them, giving you more detailed backgrounds for some of the added flair and design boosts that make your favorite superstars pop a lot more. So the card's going to have a better visual look. Aesthetically, they're going to look a little bit better. From the trailers that we have seen, I think the menus overall, I think it looks aesthetically better. I think the game overall has a better look to it. And even for Myfaction, I thought in 22 it looked dull, boring, a little clunky looking, and I'm glad that they did revamp it, and I will say that's a plus. 2K writes that when it comes to building out your lineup, making tough decisions just got simpler with the fighting styles featured on the front of the card. And the last point is that we're introducing the pink diamond tier. Expect it sometime post-launch, which opens the door to more high-powered superstars and faction combinations. So they're trying really hard with Myfaction to make it a thing. And I'm gonna play it and review it and see what I think about all of it, but not really being clear on what consequences, rewards are going to be there for an online match against some friends doesn't have me very interested. The live events piece looks cool, but if I'm unlocking rewards that are only locked into Myfaction, it's not going to really entice me to keep coming back within that mode. Let me know in the comments below, but let's talk about MyRise now, because there are some positive changes coming for this year's mode. And so the first thing is, with MyRise, you're picking either the lock or the legacy career path. The legacy focusing on the female story, playing as a second generation legend star, and the lock is focusing on a indie talent on the male side. There's lots of footage going around about MyRise, showing you all the gameplay footage, some of the scenes, some of the stories of like them fighting Sami Zayn in the beginning story of the lock story. MyRise has me interested because I like to define paths, to define storylines. Some of the voiceover work, specifically with Sami Zayn in the cutscenes, and I will say the graphic, the motion of his mouth movements looks really rough. But the things that have me very interested and really curious about with MyRise and playing it this year is the unlockables tied to MyRise. So in the little trailer piece we have here of the legacy superstar walking backstage, you could see the likes of Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, but hey, that's Triple H, 1998 Triple H, damaged Triple H that we couldn't get because he was locked to Myfaction last year, dummy. And even prototype John Cena and Paul Heyman backstage in the scene. It seems like unlockables are going to be a major component this year in your MyRise story. One of the unlockables that was found by Revolution on YouTube, there was this screenshot here that as she progressed through the story, the WWE live event arena was unlocked. So by completing certain objectives throughout the story, you are getting these unlockables. And number one, very glad and really cool to see that we're getting a WWE live event arena put into the game. But also, we saw the likes of Mighty Molly making an appearance here with this screenshot. This was going around online too, that some stars were having locked models, locked characters, even within the roster selection. So when we took notice of, say, the Hurricane, we were able to see that the main manager was locked and it was Mighty Molly, but not available. So this really opens it up with MyRise. MyRise is usually a fairly large story, and if they put character models behind MyRise, I'm okay with that, not Myfaction. The reason why is because with MyRise unlockables, you complete objectives, you unlock character models, arenas, and then it's made available in the whole game. It gives you motivation to play the mode, to achieve the objectives, and even replay certain things. And I'm okay with that. The question I'll have is that with the supercharger that we get with the deluxe edition or the icon edition, and it unlocks all of the legends and all of the stuff at the beginning, is it also going to unlock all of the characters and bonuses from MyRise? I have a feeling it's not. because they're not letting us use the supercharger when it comes to showcase mode, but it is showing us that this year we're getting a lot of unlockables and that roster is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. 2K also shared this screenshot here of Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and there are a couple of reasons why I love this. One, he's in the game, brother, and he's part of MyRise. He's an unlockable within MyRise. Two, the attire looks great. The character model looks great. We also have the classic Jean-Paul Levesque Titantrons in the game, and we're also confirming that we're getting the 2002 Raw Arena. This is where MyRise has me excited, because the story is gonna be corny, it's gonna be goofy, and it will still be some fun in there. But all of these unlockables are gonna make it a lot more fun. And by the end of it, we're gonna have a ton unlocked, from the roster to the arenas and more.